For me personally, it feels like a retro format because I'm basically using it to replace VHS. So, in other words, if I want the nostalgic experience of watching an old favorite without caring about resolution or definition or even aspect ratio, I'll pop in a DVD and I'll watch it, full frame on a CRT screen. Hey everyone, my name is Perry, and welcome back to the Cassette Phase. So we've talked several times at this point about my recent departure from the world of VHS tapes and VCRs and all that comes along with that. But if you're new to the channel, I would encourage you to go back just a few videos and check out the story behind all of that if you're interested. But long story short, my love for the VHS aesthetic didn't go away completely. It was just becoming more and more difficult for me to enjoy the movies that I love in that particular format. So I've been watching the heck out of some DVDs lately. I guess DVD has become my retro format of choice at this point, if it can be considered retro. For me personally, it feels like a retro format because I'm basically using it to replace VHS. So in other words, if I want the nostalgic experience of watching an old favorite without caring about resolution or definition or even aspect ratio, I'll pop in a DVD and I'll watch it, full frame on a CRT screen. And as I've mentioned before, doing that satisfies the need for a nostalgic feeling movie night, at least for me. So as a result, I've gone into the attic, I've gone out into the garage, and I've unpacked some old DVDs that I had stored away back when I was really only watching retro movies on VHS. And I've also picked up some DVDs recently that I want to show you. And hopefully, you all will find that this is still a good, fun way to reminisce about the movies that we loved as kids. And we'll also do our next episode of today's time capsule, as always. But then after that, it's going to be a very informal, laid-back video about going through a stack of DVDs and sharing some movie memories. Sound like fun to you? Come hang out. Okay everyone, welcome back to the Ottoman, and welcome to another great day here in the den. For today's background noise, we've got some I Dream of Jeannie going over on the CRT. I don't know, something about that theme song, it just sounds like daytime television to me, like in the summertime. I like having it going in the background. Fun old show. Okay, so we're going to do today's time capsule before we get into our stack of movies, our stack of DVDs that I want to talk about. And for this episode of today's time capsule, we're looking at a magazine. Hopefully I don't give you guys flashbacks to, the waiting room at the dentist's office or the waiting room at the doctor's office before you're about to get your shots, because that's what this makes me think of. But I recently came across a stack of old Highlights magazines at an estate sale. And here we've got one from 1985. The other ones were Christmas themed, so I'm going to save those for the upcoming holiday months. We'll go through those together, but this one is from February 1985. I thought it'd be fun to flip through it quickly on today's time capsule, because I feel like Highlights was something that many of us, saw and looked through and as kids back in the 80s. And here on the back cover, you've got, Find What's Wrong. How many things can you find wrong in this picture? These are always fun. Anyway, we're going to go through it fairly quickly. and just see if we can spark any memories. I have not gone through this yet at all, so this is my first time looking through this right here with you guys. The table of contents already is bringing back memories. You got a guide for parents and teachers. I never knew what these dots meant, but now it makes sense. Oh yeah, that's right. And so aren't you supposed to like find these pictures somewhere throughout? You don't know what page they're going to be on. How cool is that? Okay, you start off with a story. Very cool. Love the artwork. Is this like a little poem? I love stuff like this. You know, this kind of stuff reminds me of like Sesame Street, or like Reading Rainbow, or Captain Kangaroo. You got your letters page. Oh wow, the Timber Toes. Oh my goodness. Memory unlocked right there. You know, I remember Goofus and Gallant, who I'm sure we'll find here in a second, but I had completely forgotten about the Timber Toes. Wow. Over here we've got Fun with Phonics. Now isn't that an oxymoron? Fun with Phonics. Oh my goodness. Looks like we got another story page here. Of course, you got some educational. You have to. Absolutely have to have some educational material. Okay, now who doesn't remember the hidden pictures? That's got to be one of the most memorable parts of Highlights magazine, you know? Rumpelstiltskin. Very cool. You got a magic trick. Okay, so here are all the pictures you're supposed to find. If anybody wants to play, just go ahead and pause. All right, but we're going to keep moving on. Looks like some more story or history. Man. This right here is making me think of school worksheets. What is that making me think of? Something about the way that color looks. Did any of you guys have those little reading booklets like that were color coded? I don't know. I have vague memories of this, but they're like in a box, and you went through them, and the colors went up through the rainbow, and I guess they got harder as they went. And so you would read and answer a few questions, then you go put it back in the box, and you'd move on to the next color eventually. What is it, SRA or something like that? I don't know. That's going way back, so I could be imagining that, but that's what that makes me think of for whatever reason. Here we've got some cool skiing artwork. What are you supposed to do here? Look at the picture and see how many winter sports you can identify. Makes sense, but this is February. Here we've got some more educational. Some more story. Some more story. This artwork is so nostalgic, though. It reminds me so much of those books that we would learn how to read on, like the C Spot Run, and those types of things. Dick and Jane. You got some recipes, some craft stuff. The science corner. Headwork. These are like riddles and jokes and stuff. That's cool. Looks like some reader submitted drawings and stuff. I still haven't seen Goofus. Oh, there they are. There's Goofus and Gallant. Oh wow! So this page right here, this is Highlights magazine to me, along with the hidden pictures. I mean, just look at that. Yeah, you learn your lesson. You want to be like Gallant. You don't want to be like Goofus. Wow. And then you've got these stories that are told with like the pictures inserted. Love that. More stories. This one's about Valentine's, which makes sense. Looks like some more poem stuff. Got a little biography of Johann Sebastian Bach. Oh, including some sheet music. It's pretty cool. You got a little well-rounded educational magazine here. Horrible Harold. He doesn't look so horrible to me. That reminds me of a children's book that I used to read about a dog that was messy, always making a mess. Was he What a Mess? I think his name was What a Mess. That's what this reminds me of. Prince What a Mess. Got some craft stuff here. This reminds me of the Valentine's parties that we had at school, where everybody would make their little box and everybody would go hand out their awesome little Valentines, which the Valentines were amazing back then. You had Ninja Turtles, you had My Pet Monster, you had, you know, if your kid was if you had the cool parents, maybe you had some Garbage Pail Kids. So fun. And we got some science here at the end, and that's it. That was fun. I don't know about you guys, but that is, you know, when I'm thinking about today's time capsule, this is the kind of stuff that I like doing. A lot of fun with the old Highlights magazine. Okay, welcome back to the Ottoman here in the den, where we're going to work our way fairly quickly through a pretty substantial stack of DVD movies here. Keeping in mind that I was digging these back out or tracking them down as kind of replacements to the VHS tapes that I had been watching for several years. Now, I did keep a lot of my favorite VHS tapes, as I've mentioned several times before, so I will still have some duplicates going, but it's hard to really argue with the convenience of DVDs, and I've really been enjoying them. So let's get started. The first one of my all-time favorite movies. We've got The Never-Ending Story here. And I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but I will always love that cover art. I just think it's absolutely iconic and beautiful. You know, this movie is it gets kind of like mixed reviews when you hear people talk about it. I like to watch movie reactions sometimes on YouTube and see how people react to this, and you hear a lot about how dark it is and how it traumatized us as kids in the 80s, because this was 84, I believe. But you know, they didn't hide the sadness from us at all in some of the movies that we watched as kids. I mean, think about The Land Before Time and movies like that, some of those animated films. And of course, this one is no different. But just the fantasy, this is like peak 80s fantasy for me. And there was a lot of good stuff, and we'll see some more examples here in a moment. But sorry for going a little long on this one, but it is one of my favorite movies. So let's keep going. Next up, Beetlejuice. Coming up into Halloween, you know, spooky season time of year. I'll have to watch this one at least once. Along with the new one. But, you know, the original will always be tops for me. Actually, along with the cartoon. I like the old cartoon just about as much as I like this movie, honestly. All right, what's next? Okay, we've got Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I watched this one a lot as a kid, but honestly, I haven't watched it in years and years. This is probably due for a revisit really soon, because as a kid, one of the very first Disney movies that I was ever exposed to was the Disney version of Robin Hood. You know the one I'm talking about, the animated one that was such a classic, and I still enjoy that to this day. So I went from that to, within like another year or two later, seeing this version of Robin Hood, and talk about opposite ends of the spectrum, you know. But yeah, you got Kevin Costner. Pretty cool movie. Still enjoyable. I need to revisit this one soon, like I said. All right, who's next? Oh, we got R.I.P. to the great Paul Reubens. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This is one that I kept on VHS, but you know, a lot of these DVDs are very flimsy and very cheap feeling. Like this almost feels like disposable packaging. Not all of them are like that, but some of these ones that I've tracked down in recent years, you know, for $3.74 brand new or whatever, they're very, very just basic feeling. But you know what? The movie's in there. Can't go wrong with this movie. It's a classic in my opinion. Let's see what we got next. All right, speaking of classics, you guys know that I have this on VHS. I don't know. I'll probably get this in every format that I can find it. You know, I'm pretty much, when I'm watching a retro movie, I like it in an older format because I think that the film grain and, you know, the lack of clarity on some of the effects, I think it actually does a benefit, you know, to some of these films, and E.T. especially. Like, I know that this one is probably going to be the CGI animated version of the E.T. face, which I'm not as big a fan of, but the story is still there, the music is still there. You really can't go wrong. I mean, is this the iconic 80s kid movie? I think it is, in my opinion, but like I said, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K one day, whatever the case may be, if E.T. is on, I'm gonna watch it. All right, here's a cool one with Fred Savage. Little Monsters. Another good one for the upcoming Halloween season. Really strange movie. This was a frequent rental for us as kids. I don't think I ever owned it back in the day. A little bit like an old version of like Monsters, Inc. in a way, certain parts anyway. That's a fun one though, especially at Halloween. Here's another classic 80s kid adventure right here. Explorers. Now, I don't love the very ending of this movie. It gets kind of silly towards the end, but the first 2/3 of this are awesome. And I feel like it's a pretty underrated 80s kid adventure flick. Great aesthetic. You could tell that these types of movies absolutely influenced things like Stranger Things, without a doubt. All right, we've got a comedy here, and I didn't really put these in any kind of order. I kind of tried to group them a little bit. As you'll see, there's some genres lumped together, but this stack that we're in right now is very random. And here we've got a very basic DVD version of Spaceballs, but that's all you really need for a movie like that, right? I watched this one at daycare as a kid. They showed this to us. I've talked about the infamous School of Creative Play several times on the channel. They would sit us down. They didn't care if you were 4 years old or if you were 12 years old. And they would watch movies, you know, let us watch movies like this, and Temple of Doom and Teen Wolf and all these films that we probably shouldn't have been watching at the ages of 4 and 5. But that's where I first saw Spaceballs. Still hilarious. All right, here's a fun 80s, I don't know. You know what I think about with war games is how cool the scenery is, like in the arcade, and his bedroom. Just some great like 80s scenery, which sometimes that's all I'm really looking for when I revisit these old movies, is just feeling like I'm dipping myself back into those environments. You know, just disappearing into 1985 for a little while is all I'm kind of hoping for with some of these. Pretty good movie though. Good cast. Let's see, we got a Disney one here. Flight of the Navigator. Really cool movie. Another one that I rented a lot as a very young kid. You got Pee Wee Herman, right, on the voice of the spaceship creature or whatever it was. Very cool. Another one with great 80s scenery. All right, we're going back into the fantasy world here with Dark Crystal. I don't like this as much as I like Neverending Story and the movie that we're going to talk about next, but it's still good. It's still really cool. I didn't care for the Netflix continuation or whatever they did a few years ago. I couldn't get into it, but I still like revisiting the old Jim Henson classic every once in a while. This one I watch probably once a year. I do like it a little bit better. We got Labyrinth. Again, strange movie. You know, they were showing us strange movies as kids, but just full of wonder, you know, adventure, interesting music, interesting creatures, young Jennifer Connelly, who we all had a crush on at that age. Really good movie for fall. Love Labyrinth. All right, we're going into sci-fi here with the classic Alien. And this DVD's in pretty bad shape, or the case is, rather. But I love this simple cover art. You know, Alien has a very kind of unique sense of like impending doom in some of the atmosphere and environments in that movie that I feel like it's been kind of copied several times since then. Great stuff, though. All right, still sticking with some sci-fi here. We've got, let me fix the doily while I set down Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator. I watched this one just recently. I caught it on HBO Max. I hadn't seen it in a while. Still holds up. Really cool, fun, you know, science fiction movie. And if you're gonna have that one, of course you have to have Judgment Day. Also really cool movie. I kind of lost track of the series after these first two films. I don't know if any of it's worth visiting. You guys let me know. I haven't seen anything, honestly, beyond those first two. So let me know if any of the other movies or the TV shows or whatever's out there, comics even, let me know if I need to be exploring the rest of this universe in a little bit more depth. All right, so this next stack has quite a bit of horror in it. And I was reluctant to show these because I kind of wanted to save them for, you know, the upcoming Halloween content, but I had all the DVDs out. I was like, let's just go ahead and go through them quickly. We might talk about them in more detail as we get to, like, you know, a spooky movie countdown or something like that. Starting off, Fright Night. One that I never was able to track down on VHS. As is the case with a lot of these old horror movies, they're a little bit more expensive in that format, but you can find them for pretty cheap on DVD usually. And like I said, put them in full frame, you know, aspect ratio and watch it on a TV like that. You can really trick your brain into thinking you're watching a VHS tape. Love that one. I'll definitely be watching that in the upcoming weeks. As I will also with this one, Monster Squad. Super quotable. Great, like, Halloween monster 80s kids movie there. You know, one that kind of, I missed this as a kid. I think I saw, like, bits and pieces of it on TV. But I don't think I ever, like, actually sat down and watched this front to back until I was an adult. But I'm glad that I did, because it's a fun one. All right, here we've got Night of the Living Dead. This was a recent find. I don't think that I've ever seen this movie. I know. It's supposedly a classic, right? And this is the remake. This is like the 1990 or 91 remake of it. Looks creepy. I bet it's got some cool, spooky atmospheres, so I'm looking forward to checking that one out with the lights off over the next month or so. I've shown this one before. We've got Child's Play. You can find Child's Play in a bunch of different collections for very cheap, but I just like that cover. I think that's a really cool cover. Another one I have not seen, the Tales from the Dark Side movie. I've seen some episodes of the show. You know, if you flip through cable, like I still have YouTube TV, which I don't watch it for much these days other than sports, but every once in a while I'll flip through. There's a channel, and I don't know what it's called off the top of my head, but it runs this show like in back-to-back sequence, like all day long on the weekends. So interested to check out the movie. Here's a fun one. Silver Bullet. Cool effects in this one. And of course you got Corey Haim. Another one I never had on VHS, but there it is on DVD. Happy to have it. Not really horror here, but kind of like dark comedy, I guess. Good holiday movie, though. We've got Gremlins. What can I really say about Gremlins that hasn't already been said? I know I've talked about it on this channel several times. And of course, if you're going to have Gremlins, you got to have the sequel, even though it's not nearly as good. But I do love that cover art. I have a series of phone backgrounds, like, little wallpapers that you use on your phone. And I kind of change it out depending on the time of the year. I usually have a rotation of about 40 different pictures cycling through as my home screen, I guess, or no, my lock screen. And this is one of them. It looks really cool as a phone background. Maybe I'll take you guys through those one day. Here we go with They Live. John Carpenter here. And this is the basic version. I know there are special editions out there and things that are much nicer than this, but I'm just happy to be able to watch the movie. Never had this one on VHS, but it's a cool movie if you haven't seen it. I'm pretty sure it's streaming on Tubi or Pluto or one of those. More Stephen King here with Firestarter. I've seen the movie a couple times. I've never seen like the new one. I know they did like a remake of it in recent years. Probably wasn't the best, but this one's cool with a young Drew Barrymore. Never read the book. I have both paperback and hardback copies of this, but just haven't gotten to it yet. Not scary by any means, but definitely horror. We've got The Gate. I've talked about this movie a lot too, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but that is a really fun movie with some really cool like effects and tricks of the perspective and the way they make the creatures look, just really eerie. But man, great 80s vibes in this. 80s house party, 80s, interior scenery, 80s effects, of course. Absolutely love The Gate. And then we've got a random sequel here. I had the original Friday the 13th on VHS. I don't think I ever had the sequel. And I actually like the sequel a little bit better. I think Part 2's a more fun movie, at least for me. So yeah, there it is on DVD. And that pretty much brings us to the end of our spooky DVDs. But I do have a few left here. Try not to tip them over. From random genres, here we've got Rad. I love this movie. BMX bikes, 80s all the way throughout. There's a really cool little restaurant diner that they eat at in this movie that it looks like so many different places that I ate as a kid. Just the way that, I don't know, the walls, there's some lattice work in there, and the way the plants are placed, it is like stepping back in time. And then, got some great 80s movie music all throughout this. What's not to love about Rad? These next couple are going to be similar, like adventure sports type movies. Got Gleaming the Cube here with Christian Slater. Now I do have this on VHS, and I kept it thanks to a good friend of the channel. Sent this my way. But I also have it on DVD, so it's easy to watch, quickly accessible. Pretty cool movie there. Great music in that one too. Similar note, we've got Thrashin'. Not as good as Gleaming the Cube and not as good as Rad, but still fun. The acting is pretty terrible, but what do you expect, honestly, when you're watching a movie like this? I was big into skateboarding as a kid. There used to be a show on Nickelodeon called Skate TV, and it was like SK and then the number 8 TV. And I think it wasn't on for very long, and I've never even been able to find it on YouTube, unfortunately. But I would sit down with my skateboard, in the living room. I'd put my skateboard down on the carpet and sit on the skateboard and watch that show. And then, of course, I'd go out in front of the house and try to do all the tricks that I had just seen on the show. And that's kind of what Thrashin' reminds me of, is old Skate TV. All right, we've got a 90s movie here. I've talked about this one recently, so we're going to move it along quickly, but I really do like The River Wild. I don't know what it is about it. It's, it's a suspense thriller kind of movie with some messed up stuff that happens, but it's one of those comfort movies for me that just, I like to have it on in the background. I've seen it a million times. Good stuff, though. Same could be said for a lot of these upcoming movies, honestly. Kindergarten Cop, no exception. Seen it a bunch. Always like to have it on. Whenever I see it somewhere playing, I usually turn it on and finish it out, no matter what part of the movie it was in. Lots of funny one-liners in that one, especially from those kids. Not going to talk too long about Big. We talked about E.T. and Never-Ending Story as being some of my favorite movies of all time. This one is up there too. This is probably top 5. Love this movie. Makes you feel like a kid again. I think that was the whole point. Now we got a baseball comedy here. Major League. Pretty funny. It was kind of okay, but definitely reminds me of that era for sure. Good friend of the channel, James Moss, will appreciate this one. We've got Ernest Goes to Camp. I think James did a review of this movie over on his channel recently, if you want to check that out. This is my favorite of the Ernest movies. I like this one better than the holiday ones. I mean, they're all silly fun, let's be honest. There's not too much difference in them, but this was the first one that I saw, again, at daycare, and it just stuck with me. Good old Ernest P. Worrell. All right, here we've got an early 90s movie called Career Opportunities, again with a young Jennifer Connelly. This is the one that if you've never seen it, you've probably seen like scenes of it in memes or whatever. It takes place in a Target after it's been closed down for the night. That alone makes it worth watching. Just seeing what Target looked like in 1990 is kind of cool. But it's not a bad movie. Some interesting stuff in it for sure, but definitely a product of its time. Okay, we've got the original, well, for me anyway, the original Batman. This is how I was first introduced to the character. Even before I read comics or played video games, this was the movie that I watched. Now, I did see the old TV show from the 60s on, like, in the afternoons, like at babysitters' houses and stuff like that, but I never really paid it much attention. I never paid any attention to Batman until this movie right here. And I kept my copy of that on VHS because I got it for Christmas as a kid and I still have my original one. Now here's a So Bad It's Good, if that's really a thing. Teen Witch. Now, this movie can be hard to get through in certain spots. It's absolute cringe in certain sections, but maybe that's just part of the charm. I don't know. Because I'd say 2/3 of it is pretty enjoyable. And, if nothing else, the scenery and the atmosphere is just absolutely 80s in every possible way. Another good one to watch around the Halloween season. It's definitely streaming on one of the free sites as well, if you don't have a copy of it. Here we've got License to Drive. Wondering if New 80s Revolution ever watched this. I can't remember if he did or not. If Jason watched this, I know he was going to. Cool 80s movie with the Coreys and a young Heather Graham. Really cool music, and you'll hear me say this a lot, but the environments, the homes, the school, the streets, all just feels like you're stepping back in time, which is awesome. Another one that I've talked about a lot on the channel. It's one of my all-time favorites. We've got Uncle Buck. I kept my VHS copy of that as well. Is this my favorite John Candy? I think it might be. I know there are lots, but this is probably my favorite out of all of them. You really can't go wrong with any of them, honestly. Feels like a movie for holiday time of year. I don't know why. Love Uncle Buck. Fun story about Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. There was my childhood movie theater, which I've talked about on the channel before. I've even shown pictures. If I remember, I'll put the image in again just because I love it so much. It's long gone, unfortunately, but it had glass block, light up entryway, all kinds of cool carpeting, an arcade, of course. It was just your great 80s movie theater. And that is where I saw Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Now, this would have been early 90s, I believe, but close enough. You get what I'm saying. I remember seeing this and Right Said Fred, I'm pretty sure, like really close to back-to-back weekends. I think they were around the same time. I could be imagining that, or as is the case as we get older, the timeline might be a little bit mixed up in my head, but for whatever reason, I think I saw this, and then the following weekend saw Drop Dead Fred. Is that his name? Did I say Right Said Fred earlier? Now I can't remember which one I said. Drop Dead Fred. Not the one that sings the horrible song, the I'm Too Sexy song. Not that. Whatever movie had Phoebe Cates and the weird guy, the weird imaginary friend. I'm pretty sure I saw that at the same time, or close to, as I saw this movie. Another thing that I think about with Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, when the babysitter dies, they pull her out of the house, wrapped up in the same California Raisins bed sheets that I had at the time, that I still have over in the walk-in toy box. So, always kind of funny when I see that. Now I'm wondering if I messed that up, if I'm going to have to edit that section out. We'll see. I guess we'll find out. Here we've got Blade Runner. I haven't seen this movie very many times. I think I've only watched this all the way through like once. I need to give it another chance though, because I did enjoy it, but I've heard that this is one that grows on you after you see it a few times. I know it was very influential. Very cool aesthetic all throughout that movie too. And we've got one of my favorites, Batteries Not Included. Saw it as a kid, didn't see it again for like 30 years, and then I watched it as an adult and it came flooding back. Loved that feeling, and it instantly became a favorite. All right. Okay, so I've got just a few more to show you guys. If you're still with me, I appreciate it. The last ones that I have here are a couple of different categories. So I've got a couple of animated movies, starting off with G.I. Joe, the movie. I thought I had the Transformers movie on DVD, but I can't find it. I might have gotten rid of it or sold it, unfortunately, because I did like that one too. But this is a cool one. If you like the cartoon, you're going to like the movie most likely. Happy to have that one on DVD. And then a recent pickup, another based on a cartoon. I've never seen this movie, so I'm excited to check out Toxic Crusaders, the movie. And I only watched the show a little bit as a kid. I thought the toys were cool because I was a big fan of Ninja Turtles, and the Toxic Crusaders toys reminded me of Ninja Turtles a lot. But yeah, I'm excited to check that out. I think that'll be fun. And then to wrap it up, I've got a few like double packs, I guess, like double features. And then after that, I've got just a few of the DVDs with the different kinds of cases on them. So here we've got Problem Child 1 and 2. Not the best movies in the world, but I remember seeing them all the time on USA. I think it was USA. It might have been TBS. But on cable all the time growing up. Good to have 1 and 2. Here we've got Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2. I don't like Teen Wolf 2 like at all. I can't really find anything enjoyable about it, unfortunately. And maybe it's just because I like the original one so much. Like, I love Teen Wolf. I feel like that's a great 80s movie. Michael J. Fox at his peak. But yeah, just not so much with old part 2 there. But it's cool to have both, on one DVD set. Same thing here with Nightmare on Elm Street and Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I know there are several more, but cool to have this double feature of the very first two. Poltergeist 2 and Poltergeist 3, and then when I was pulling that off the shelf, I realized that I don't actually have Poltergeist, which is one of my favorites. I love the original Poltergeist, but I only have it on VHS, so I'm gonna need to look for the original Poltergeist on DVD next time I'm out, because we're coming up to the time of year where I have to watch it at least once. Here we've got Mannequin and Mannequin 2, another double feature there of a, you know, cheesy comedies from back in the day. Double feature here of Cloak and Dagger, which I could kind of take or leave, Cloak and Dagger, but you guys know I love The Wizard, and that's the only way I have it on DVD is with this double feature. So, Wizard, one of my all-time favorite movies. Alright, so that's it for the double features. I've got 5 movies left, guys. If you're still around, again, I appreciate it. These were just at the bottom of the stack because of the types of cases that they're in. They're in those like clamp cases. I don't know what you call them. With the, you know, the little part that closes like this, locks them shut. They line up better on the shelf if you put them next to each other, I guess. So that's kind of why they were at the bottom of the stack. So we got the original Superman. I can hear the theme music as I look at that. My favorite Christmas movie of all time, and one of my top 10 movies of any genre of all time. We've got National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I have like 3 or 4 copies of this on VHS. I think I have this on DVD in 2 or 3 different releases as well. Just one of those ones I kind of grab every time I see it, you know? Another good movie for the upcoming Halloween season, we've got The Lost Boys. Really cool movie there. I told you I don't like horror comics. Yeah, this is a fun one. '90s movie here. I just watched this one fairly recently. It was cool. Species. Just a fun, over-the-top, you know, '90s sci-fi movie. One of those films that when it came on TV, like late at night while you're at home watching it, and your parents walking in the room, you flip the channel really quick, you know? If you know, you know. And then the last one. Now, this is '90s again, so right around the time that I was learning how to drive, my biggest crush at the time was probably Alicia Silverstone. You know, the Aerosmith videos and Clueless, and then especially this movie right here, which is appropriately titled The Crush, which is pretty inappropriate stuff by today's standards, but you know, a lot of movies were like that back then. And I thought she was really good in this role. I thought she played this character in a really creepy way, which was awesome. So that is the stack for today, guys. We'll be doing this again, I think, once I didn't show you everything that I had, obviously. I just picked some of my favorites right off the top, but yeah, I'm excited to continue talking about DVDs and the memories that we have of all of these movies.
And there we are. So I hope that you all enjoyed hanging out here in the den today talking movies. And if you did, consider subscribing if you're new around here. Also, don't forget to like the video, but only if you actually liked the video. But for now, and as always, relax. Enjoy life and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.